She could have been a hero. She could have.
Finally, after 20 years, they finally got him.
Please have mercy on him. Please have mercy on him.
I committed the horrible act of depriving someone of her life.
Elsa Segura was convicted of aiding and abetting premeditated first-degree murder in the death of Baugh on New Year's Eve 2019.
This coming New Year's will mark 2 years since my daughter Monique Baugh was kidnapped.
She could have been a hero. She could have warned Monique. She could have warned her that showing was fake. Monique's oldest daughter, Legend, said to me a couple weeks ago, she said that she wants to. And I said, no, baby, why would you say that? And she said, because I want to see my mommy. And she said, you can bring me flowers. And I knew she was referring to the times that we bring Monique flowers to her grave.
Because you could have stopped this from happening. And so it is not an injustice.
Elsa Segura's boyfriend, Lyndon Wiggins, is set for trial in May. Police believe he orchestrated the plot to kidnap Monique to try to find her boyfriend, with whom Wiggins was feuding. The fourth defendant set for trial is Shantae Davis, the sister of one of the killers and girlfriend of the other.
A Hennepin County judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Antonio Riano, a 62-year-old man who the Butler County Sheriff's Department had not seen in 20 years, recently appeared in court for the first time. His return has stirred up deep emotions, particularly for the victim's girlfriend at the time, who is now confronting the resurfacing of past trauma and grief after decades of waiting for justice.
After 20 years, they finally got him.
Stephanie Richardson shares that she now has to relive the pain, facing the emotional toll of the past all over again due to recent developments in the case.
Just happy-go-lucky with my life, and when I found out Thursday that he had been found, I saw it on my phone. I immediately fell to the floor.
Riano was wanted in connection with a deadly shooting in Hamilton in 2004. Prosecutors allege that he shot and killed Benjamin Becerra, the former boyfriend of Stephanie Richardson, outside a Roadhouse bar. Richardson says she is attending court to represent Becerra's family and to seek justice for him.
He was a gentle giant. He was a very loving person.
U.S. Marshals located Antonio Riano in his hometown in Mexico. He now faces a murder charge and could potentially spend the rest of his life in a U.S. prison. Due to his fleeing the country, the judge denied bail. A 75-year-old retiree, Barbara Blue, claims she shot her neighbor in self-defense after a long-standing dispute. This comes just days after the victim's family requested that her charges be upgraded to murder. Initially arrested in late June, Barbara Blue is now out on bond and is eager to ensure that both sides of the story are heard. Sitting alongside her attorney, she says facing criminal charges is something she never imagined. The incident occurred in a gray area near Hillcroft, Houston.
Never in my wildest dream. No. It's been traumatic.
The former nurse and Marine veteran, Barbara Blue, now finds herself fighting for her freedom and reputation following the fatal shooting of her neighbor. She insists the incident was an act of self-defense and is determined to defend herself against the criminal charges.
Heard a lot of lies about me, but the truth will come.
Barbara Blue is charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon in the shooting of her 66-year-old neighbor, Daryl Evans. Evans's family claims that Blue frequently harassed them since they moved in across the street. However, Blue and her attorney, James Rivera, argue that Evans was the aggressor and had even threatened her on the day of the confrontation.
Ms. Blue said, back off, back off. Scared to death, she had a pistol. He would not back off. She shot.
Attorney James Rivera argues that Barbara Blue's case is a clear instance of self-defense, a right that every Texan is entitled to under the law. He maintains that Blue acted to protect herself during the incident and is justified in doing so based on Texas self-defense laws.
They suffered at the hands of a bully.
The Evans family is pushing for Barbara Blue to face a murder charge instead of aggravated assault in the shooting of Daryl Evans. Meanwhile, Blue is currently staying with her brother, Ron, as the legal proceedings continue.
I'm hoping that the truth comes out and that, she's able to live whatever life she has left peacefully.
A life that took a dramatic turn.
Never like this. Never.
This seemingly mild-mannered retiree, Barbara Blue, never expected her life to change so drastically. Initially held on a $400,000 bond, it was later reduced to $75,000 because she cannot return to her home, where she has lived since 1982. Blue is now staying with her brother as she faces charges for the shooting of her neighbor, Daryl Evans, while defending her actions as self-defense. 2 of the 5 juveniles in custody for the killing of a 64-year-old Omaha man appeared in court. Joseph Keyes and Trenton Titsworth Hunt will be tried as adults. Prosecutors believe that these 2, along with 3 other juveniles, including a child, were in a stolen car when they robbed someone at a West Omaha convenience store before later shooting Mersa Jana. The judge has ordered that both Keyes and Titsworth Hunt be held without bail. Joseph Keyes, who should be in a classroom listening to his teacher, is instead in a courtroom listening to a judge read 6 felony charges filed against him.
One is robbery. That particular charge carries 1 to 50 years in prison. Counts 2, 4, and 6 are 3 counts of use of a firearm to commit a felony. Each one of those 3 charges carries minimum 5 years, maximum 50 years in prison. Count 3 is another robbery charge, so that is another 1 to 50 years in prison. And the final count is murder in the first degree. That particular charge carries a life sentence.
Keyes is one of 4 teenagers charged in the murder of 64-year-old Mersa Jana, who was shot and later died at the hospital. Keyes is being tried as an adult, as is Trenton Titsworth Hunt, who also faces first-degree murder charges. Prosecutors informed the judge that this wasn't Titsworth Hunt's first time in a courtroom.
Youth are becoming younger and younger.
Tamika Meese is the executive director of the North Omaha Community Partnership, an organization that works with at-risk youth and their families. She says she's noticing that defendants are getting younger and younger.
The trends are they'll start off with the first police contact with, small things like stealing cars. They'll be booked and released, and then they'll come back for stealing another car. And then once they come back after that, it's a more serious offense and oftentimes more violent offenses.
In court, prosecutors revealed that one of the younger suspects was allegedly seen with a gun equipped with an extended magazine. Meese believes that making programs and services aimed at helping troubled juveniles and their families mandatory could help reduce the number of young people ending up in front of a judge.
I would say 99% of the youth that we work with, when we work with their families and interact with them, they were already in the middle of a crisis. They were already experiencing trauma. Their home is not stabilized.
Meese says she relates to these troubled kids because she was once a troubled kid herself.
It's just heartbreaking to witness, a kid that you've worked with go through this and to know that it could have been prevented if the program and services were taken more seriously.
After listening to the charges and initial evidence, the judge decided to hold them without bond. Benjamin Christopher Mendez was found guilty of murdering Carson Whitesell. During the court hearing, Mendez apologized to the victim's family, saying he was sorry for what he did. Mendez shot and killed Whitesell at the Peach Stand in Fort Mill in January.
Ladies and gentlemen, who are present here today, judge, government officials, all who are witnessing, and I would first and foremost, and I would especially like to address what I'm going to say first and foremost to the family and loved ones of the victim, Carson Bailey Whitesell, and secondly, to my own family and loved ones. I don't know if there are words that I could say that could help you. If there are, I don't feel very confident of being sure of what they are. But what I do know is that I wish I hadn't done what I did. I wish I would have had a better mind at the time. And with it, have thought of a way to actually try to resolve my personal issues instead of doing what I did. I wish I had made better decisions early on in life that would have had me better situated and would have kept me far away from doing what I did. I wish I had been more open to trying medications and had known which ones would have been the best ones to help me be more mentally and emotionally stable, like I feel I am now, that I have found the proper medications, and because of it, I am able to cope with my existence more appropriately. But instead, I committed the horrible act of depriving someone of her life. And for that, I am sorry. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused to you, and I am sorry for your loss.
I understand that Mr. Mendez had mental health issues. However, it's clear from his statements and from his evaluation that he understood right from wrong at the time. It was not a very kind of compulsion. It was a premeditated act. It's not a heat of passion. He got offended by something he perceived that she said or looked at him. He then went out, armed himself, came back into the store and waited for her. I understand he's not harmed anyone else. He probably could have. State versus Christopher Benjamin Mendez. The charge is murder. The sentence of the court is Mr. Mendez is committed to custody of the South Carolina Department of Corrections for his natural life without the possibility of parole.
A judge sentenced him to spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. Two convicted felons, who were out on parole, are back behind bars, accused of involvement in a deadly triple shooting.
The change is people need to wake up, and, everybody complains about the system and this and that. Well, the people that can change it, what are you doing?
Monday's attack on Hazelwood Terrace resulted in the death of a 19-year-old woman and left two teenage boys in critical condition. Rochester police suspect the two men arrested may have been involved in other shootings around the city. The suspects, 21-year-old Nasazir Horton and 21-year-old Quentin Riviera, have been charged with murder. Both men were out on parole for previous felony convictions, and Horton had been arrested and released for another incident just 19 days prior. Last night, Rochester police, along with a SWAT team and tactical unit, executed multiple search warrants and arrested both suspects. The two convicted felons with extensive criminal histories appeared before a judge. Horton and Riviera are now in custody in connection with the shooting that killed 19-year-old Rukia Isaac and injured two other teens in Rochester's Beechwood neighborhood.
It was brazen, it was violent, and not only did a young woman, two other young men were seriously injured.
Police executed multiple search warrants at a home on Edmond Street, which they say was being used as a gatehouse to sell cocaine and marijuana, before arresting 21-year-old Nasazir Horton and 21-year-old Quentin Riviera.
A targeted attack against at least one of the two young men that were shot. And, Miss Isaac was just walking down the sidewalk and she was hit by a stray bullet by the suspect.
Horton and Riviera are both charged with second-degree murder, assault, and drug possession.
We knew that this was a house that the suspects used to sell drugs. We hit it when the suspects were there, and we found over 150 vials of cocaine.
Police say both suspects in this case have extensive felony records and are believed to be involved in multiple other shootings in the city.
Both on parole. So since the time they were 18, they've gotten multiple felony convictions. They've done, a small amount of prison time, and they've been paroled out.
Investigators say Horton was released on parole for assault in March, while Riviera is on parole for burglary. Both men have prior convictions for weapons possession. On July 24th, Horton's parole officer arrested him for allegedly riding a stolen moped. He was charged with violating parole and released from custody. Due to their prior convictions, neither man can legally possess a weapon. The assistant district attorney handling the case has expressed frustration over the violence.
Violence in the city of Rochester has been skewing younger and younger for several years now. And, it's sad that this has become commonplace in Rochester.
The family is pissed that somebody who should not have been out of jail was out of jail and took away their 19-year-old daughter who worked and was trying to live a normal life. They're pissed because they've been let down by the system who let a violent predicate felon, out of jail after he was just arrested.
The pair entered not guilty pleas in Rochester City Court today. A third suspect, 38-year-old Ronaldo Napier, was present at the residence during the search and has been charged with criminal possession of a controlled substance. A 24-year-old woman is accused of murder. Prosecutors say the crime was caught on camera. The woman, Demarius Wade, appeared in court for the first time on charges of second-degree reckless homicide, but this is not her first encounter with the law. Investigators say the incident occurred because Wade intervened in a separate fight involving a couple with a history of domestic violence.
Extremely violent. It caused the death of an individual.
Prosecutors say the incident occurred when the suspect intervened in a separate fight.
Acknowledge the severity of the crime and the way the state characterized it as an intervention.
On that July morning, investigators say 24-year-old Demarius Wade saw a man become violent during an argument in an alley. The man's on and off girlfriend told police that he pushed her down, hit her, and dragged her while she screamed for him to stop. That's when Wade intervened, fighting the man and telling the woman she was protecting her.
Miss Wade was seen striking the victim in this case 22 times in the head. Cause of death was found to be blunt force trauma.
Wade is charged with second-degree reckless homicide. While this is her first time being accused of killing someone, court officials say it's not her first encounter with the law.
16, another burglary. In 2016, criminal damage to property. And then in 2015, first-degree sexual assault with a child under the age of 13.
A commissioner set Wade's bail in the courtroom at $85,000. The family of a woman who was a repeat offender is making an emotional plea for leniency. Terrell Rollins caused the death of Renee Holmes William in a high-speed crash in Plant City in 2020. Rollins, now 27, was convicted of third-degree murder and other related charges. During the court hearing, both families, united by this tragedy, asked the judge to show compassion. Despite their appeals, the judge sentenced Rollins to 30 years in prison. The scene in the Hillsborough County courtroom saw both families pleading for the judge to give Terrell Rollins another chance.
Mercy on him. But do what you got to do and do it right. Change your way of thinking. Change your heart.
Please have mercy on him. Please have mercy on him. This was an accident. I know in a million years, he's not that type of child.
On April 23, 2021, Plant City police attempted to pull over Terrell Rollins for having illegally tinted windows. Instead of stopping, Rollins sped off into a neighborhood, reaching speeds of up to 92 miles per hour. The chase came to a tragic end when he crashed into 53-year-old Amanda Renee Holmes Williams, killing her instantly. After the crash, Rollins fled the scene on foot.
She just had to go home. She'd completed her assignment on this earth, and you were simply the means to get her there.
The judge sentenced Rollins to 30 years in prison, noting his 2 prior terms behind bars. At the same time, the judge also acknowledged the faith and compassion shown by Amanda Renee Holmes Williams' family throughout the process.
I've always sat back and marveled at those families that just are able to still forgive, to seek mercy.
Despite the pleas for leniency, the judge reminded Rollins that he had already been given a second chance.
My hope is that when you get out of prison, which will be somewhere in your 50s, possibly, that you've got your head on straight.
Rollins was found guilty of 5 crimes, including third-degree murder and leaving the scene of a crash that resulted in a death. The verdict came during his trial. Luis Talamantes Romero, convicted of murdering Jacqueline Vigil, the mother of 2 state police officers, is set to be sentenced. He faces a potential life sentence plus 31.5 years for her death in 2019. Additionally, Romero is awaiting sentencing in a federal immigration case where he could receive up to 20 more years in prison. a man was charged with killing Jewish community leader Samantha Wool. The jury couldn't decide on 2 charges, but found Michael Jackson Bolanos not guilty of first-degree murder. The judge decided Bolanos couldn't be retried for Wool's murder or home invasion. However, Bolanos was sentenced for lying to the police about the case. His sentence ranges from 18 months to 15 years. The murder of Samantha Wool is still completely unsolved. The investigation is ongoing to find her killer. Michael Jackson Bolanos, who was found not guilty of the murder, was expected to be released from jail. However, his legal team and observers were stunned by what happened in court. Bolanos was found not guilty of felony murder. Since the judge followed legal guidelines, he can't be retried for second-degree murder related to a home invasion for which no evidence was presented. That leaves his conviction for lying to the police. The Department of Corrections had recommended 18 months of probation, but Judge Margaret Van Houten gave him 18 months in prison with a possibility of up to 15 years. This decision has left Bolanos and his lawyers in shock.
We are absolutely convinced overwhelming evidence points to him as and disappointed in the justice system, but we're glad he's going to remain in jail for the next few months and hopefully longer. And we're going to appeal the legal issues as much as we can. Our family has been devastated by this whole process and the antics of the defense attorneys who have used lies, misdirection, made up stories, hypotheses that have all been proven untrue. So our family's just trying to persevere and get through this nightmare.
Samantha Wool's parents left the courthouse looking deflated. They didn't get the conviction they hoped for, and the man they believe is responsible for their daughter's murder was found not guilty. However, he's still imprisoned for lying to the police, and his sentence could be quite long. Lieutenant Rich Cadell of the York Police Department provided details about a stabbing incident on December 23rd, where a young boy stabbed a teenager who was allegedly bullying him.
Your Honor, on the evening of December 23rd of 2013, our officers responded to a call of a man down with a knife. They responded to the area and found the victim, and talking with the victim, he indicated that it was that was involved in the stabbing incident. We were able to locate him pretty quickly, speak with him and his mother. We brought him to the police department, spent a good bit of time with them. We sought medical attention to be sure he was okay and not having any problems. And of course, they did tell us that he in fact did stab the victim, but his defense was that it was because he was being picked on. The victim received some pretty serious injuries, but is okay now. And as the court ordered last time we were before you, I did speak to all the kids that were in this group that he was part of, and it was indicated to me that on different days, at different times, a different kid in the group received the unwanted attention, which may be a fight, an argument, or picking off. We could not substantiate anything bullying by statute, but we did look into that the best we could, and we couldn't get there. It was an unfortunate cycle that he and his friends were involved in, to where daily, sometimes more than that, they would be in an altercation within their group, and then they would be friends.
On New Year's Eve 2018 in Michigan, amidst the celebrations, Kemia Hassel ended an old relationship while holding hands with her boyfriend, Jeremy Queller, creating a lasting memory for all. The prosecutor's role is to present the case to the court and keep the focus on the accused throughout the proceedings. But this is just the beginning.
But I think you should meet Tyrone Hassel III. He grew up in the Benton Harbor area. He was the pride of his family. A scholar at Benton Harbor High School, junior ROTC at high school, got a scholarship to go to Grand Valley State University and went there. While at Grand Valley, he decided he wanted to serve his country. So he enlisted in the Army. He took that same work ethic with him and was very successful in the Army. He moved up, gained the respect and the admiration from the people in his unit, and made sergeant at a very young age. because of how he approached his job and the responsibility that he took on. People with him in his unit looked up to him. His family looked up to him too. They looked up to him because he looked out for them, always giving to them. You'll find a few years ago, his brother just graduated from Benton Harbor. Sergeant Hassel said, "Why don't you move out?" He was in the Army at the time. "Why don't you move out to Colorado with us? Start a better life out there." That upset the defendant. You'll also hear that on January 2nd, 2 days after he was murdered, he was set to go back to Georgia with his little sister. Same situation. Little sister had just graduated from high school, and he was going to take her back to Georgia with him to start a better life down there. He gave to his family. He gave to his country in the Army. He gave up until the moment that his life was taken. Sergeant Hassel met the defendant, Wyatt Hassel, in the Army. They married, had a child. They married in 2016. The child, Tyrone Hassel IV. Affectionately, they nicknamed him Chunk. He was pretty big, hefty. Things aren't always easy though when you have a newborn. Life can get stressful. Things can get tough. The defendant was not happy with her life and the stress. She wanted more that she felt she was not getting from Sergeant Hassel in their relationship. In February of 2018, Sergeant Hassel deployed to Korea. The defendant also took a deployment to Korea. They're in separate units. They're in separate barracks in Korea. They would see each other, but they were living separately. That started in February 2018. Chunk, I'm just going to call him Chunk. Their child stayed back in the U.S. While they were there, Sergeant Hassel called the defendant my queen, loved her. She started to grow distant from him. She was looking for something to fill the void that she felt she had, and found that in someone in her own unit, Jeremy Cuellar. Jeremy Cuellar showed her the affection that she was looking for and what she wanted. Jeremy Cuellar told her, "I'm going to take care of you. I'll give you what you need. I can take care of Chunk too."
Ladies and gentlemen, there is no question that Sergeant Hassel's death is not just sad, but is a tragedy. Anytime anyone dies, I think we all agree, it is sad. Okay? Even when there's someone you didn't particularly like, you find yourself maybe not talking bad about them afterwards after they, because there's a certain reverence we give to people. It's sad. You don't want to badmouth someone who's not around anymore. And there's no question that it is particularly sad. It is tragic when a young man who, by all accounts, had decades of life left to live, who was a husband and a father, when he doesn't just die, but he's hurt. That is exceedingly tragic. But as sad as that is, ladies and gentlemen, as good a guy as I'm sure Sergeant Hassel was, I'm sure he was great with his family, I'm sure he was a good father to his son, as giving and as loving as a man as he may or may not have been, that doesn't make Kamiyah Hassel any more or less guilty of being involved in this. Hearing all the things about his rise through the military, as impressive as I'm sure it was, and as bad as we feel for his family, and I'm not immune to that, I'm human too, as bad as we feel for his family, that doesn't make Kamiyah Hassel more responsible. It makes us angry. It makes us frustrated that things like this happen. But our job, and your job in particular, is not to take out that anger and frustration and sadness and empathy, to take all those feelings, roll them up, and blame Kamaya Hassel for his. Because that would be a tragedy too, ladies and gentlemen. Think about it. Think about, forget me being a lawyer. Think about this. Convicting someone who's not responsible of that is a tragedy too. Saying to someone who's not responsible for someone else's death, you're responsible and you will be dealt with accordingly, that is tragic too. And my hope is that all of us together can avoid that second tragedy. And the way that we do so, ladies and gentlemen, the way that we do in this case, the way that we do in any criminal case, is we take a look at the evidence that we have. Now, I am a little surprised to hear Mr. Perangeli talk about Ms. Hassel as sort of the mastermind behind this, because I think there's no question in my mind, and I think Mr. Perangeli and I agree on this at least, that Jeremy Cuellar is directly, no question about it, responsible for Tyrone Hassel. There's no question about it, no doubt, reasonable or otherwise. One of the things that you will see, I believe, is you'll see evidence of, as Mr. Perangeli said, a trail of his cell phone driving up from Georgia to Chicago. Then you're going to see him coming over to Berrien County. There's no question that he's here at the time of the shooting. He is clearly involved in this. He's clearly responsible for this. But just because he's responsible does not mean Kamaya Hassel's involved. Among the many things I'm not is a licensed therapist, a medical doctor. I don't have a PhD. But I feel confident in telling you that I think the evidence will clearly establish that Jeremy Cuellar is a full-blown psychopath. Forget the fact that he planned to murder someone. I think that alone can put you in a special category. But what he does, ladies and gentlemen, is Specialist Hamilton, he's going to come up here and he's going to tell you, Jeremy Cuellar told him, straight up told him in June of last year, I'm going to do this. I am going to kill this guy. And I'm going to do so because I want to be with Kamaya. He never hears anything about this from Kamaya. In fact, Specialist Hamilton isn't even sure that there's anything going on between Miss Hassel, between Kamaya and Mr. Cuellar. They're on a base together for months and months. And he can't even really say if anything's going on between them in the first place. No. This is Mr. Cuellar's plan. This is his idea. And he sits there and he tells Specialist Hamilton about it. And Specialist Hamilton, for whatever reason, he doesn't tell anybody about this. He doesn't appear to tell his superiors about this. As far as I can tell, he doesn't even tell Kamaya about this. He just says, okay, man, that's great. You have your plan, and he goes on his merry way.
As the evidence of his misdeed was presented, the criminal's expression showed how far she had fallen in her own eyes.
Hey! Sorry, you grab him? We grab a tape later, you have to sit down.
I arrived on scene shortly after several other officers. When I came on scene, I'd actually made my way along the passenger side of that car and come around to the front where I saw an individual. Basically, he was sitting on the ground with his back up against the side of the car by the driver's door, head hanging down.
Did you notice injuries?
Yes.
What are the injuries that you noticed, sir?
The first thing I noticed was that he was obviously deceased. I could see brain matter on the ground. I could see that he had it coming out. He was profusely. He was obviously, I'm not a doctor, but it appeared that he was.
As part of your duties, that wasn't your main call. St. Joe Township was the main agency responding, sir?
Yes, sir.
Did you try to assist them in any way that you could?
Yes, myself and another sergeant from Berrien County actually assisted with helping medic get the victim out of there. when they were trying to figure out what was going on with the scene, I asked if there's anything I could do, and I asked them if they would like me to run a track or try to attempt a track for an unknown suspect at that time.
Okay. So is that what you did?
I did.
How shortly after you got the call did you start the track, sir?
I would say within 15 minutes of showing up on scene, and I would say about 15 minutes I began the track.
Is it important to start a track soon?
Yeah, time is always essential. With all scents, they tend to dissipate over time. It's just a matter of how well you train with your dog to continue tracking. You usually use long distance of time to get your dog used to working harder to find that scent.
And the defendant's plan, and it was her plan and Cuellar's plan. Not his plan, but their mutual plan. Their agreed upon plan, as Jaquan Hamilton said. And they would have gotten away with it if not for Jaquan Hamilton. Hamilton, he's a very conflicted person, as you could tell when he found out about this. And he said, I went to the chaplain after Jeremy Cuellar approached me and told me what he did. And he said it still took me a couple days because he was friends with them. It wasn't easy. Same squad, same company. You heard Sergeant Burks talk about what that's like. The amount of time you spend together. Brothers in arms. But he came forward and he testified to, regardless of friendship, almost a loyalty above all, except honor. There's no honor in what this defendant did. And Sergeant Hamilton said it was the right thing to come forward, so he did. If it hadn't been for Sergeant Hamilton, Jeremy Cuellar and this defendant would be in Georgia right now with Tyrone IV and $500,000. So let's start out with this plan. Sergeant Tyrone Hassel IV loved his wife, not the person sitting here, his wife. Sergeant Burks talked about that. That was my queen. Even the defendant's statement said, he was a good husband. He's better than Jeremy Cuellar. He's a pretty good guy. He would have protected him. He would have protected his queen. A giving man whose last act was to give, whose life was dedicated to giving, to his family, his friends, and his country. That giving was taken away by her because she wanted to be with Jeremy Cuellar. She thought it would be a better life. Was there a plan? You absolutely know there was a plan. She admitted it. Did you plan with Jeremy to kill Tyrone? Yes, in her own initials. And the defendant's confession alone is enough to convict her. Everything you heard during that interview, this was no false confession. This was no forced confession. She wanted to talk to Detective Longuski. That is the testimony. She voluntarily went up. She wanted to talk, as Officer Pepper said, I want to clear my name. Well, she wasn't able to do that. She couldn't clear her name. And she realized that. And if this was a false confession, it is simply amazing how much all the aspects of her confession and the details that she gave, details that these officers did not know beforehand, matched up with everything else and all the other evidence. Details that are corroborated by others. This was a plan that she made. And like her mom said in that phone call, an evil, demonic, calculated, that's her mom's word, calculated plan. Her response, we planned it and I wasn't thinking it all through.
And you were talking about doing it in Korea.
Yeah.
So what happened? Why didn't you do it in Korea?
No, it was just planned in Korea. It wasn't to be done in Korea. It was just planned in Korea when we got back to the States.
Okay.
Plan in Korea, let's start with that plan. Let's talk about Jaquan Hamilton. Now, she said in her confession it started in Korea. What did Jaquan Hamilton tell you? This plan started in Korea. He said In the summertime of 2018, he was approached by Jeremy Cuellar. Cuellar had just come from this defendant's room and said, "Buddy's got to go, got to get rid of him." You all know what that means.
And the record will reflect that the jury is back, appropriately seated in the jury box. Ladies and gentlemen, my understanding is you have reached a verdict, and if so, that is correct. Who will speak for you? We have juror number 10 in seat 10. I'm going to ask if he would open that envelope for us, please. Open that. I'm going to ask, sir, if you would please read in count 1 your verdict.
Guilty of first degree premeditated murder as aider or abettor.
Thank you. And as to count 2?
Guilty of conspiracy to commit first degree premeditated murder.
All right, thank you. It has been properly marked and signed and dated. I will poll the jury. Beginning in the front row, seat number 1, juror 22, are those your verdicts?
Yes.
In seat 2, juror number 2, are those your verdicts?
Yes, ma'am.
Seat 3 has been vacated. Seat 4, juror number 4, are those your verdicts?
Yes.
Seat 5, juror number 5, are those your verdicts?
Yes.
Seat 6, juror number 6, are those your verdicts?
They are.
Seat 7 is vacated. In the back row to the far left, we have seat number 14, juror 23, are those your verdicts?
Yes.
And seat 13, juror 19, sir, are those your verdicts?
Yes, Your Honor.
Seat 12, juror 17, sir, are those your verdicts?
Yes, ma'am.
Seat 11, juror 16, are those your verdicts?
Yes.
4-person, seat 10, juror 10, are those your verdicts?
Yes, ma'am.
Seat 9, juror number 9, are those your verdicts?
Yes.
Seat 8, juror number 8, are those your verdicts?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your time, your patience, and your attention in this matter. Your service is greatly appreciated. At this time, you're free to discuss the case with anyone if you like. You do not have to if you don't want to. Thank you again greatly for your service.
All right, jury, please.
Thank you, may be seated.
All right.
Kemia Hassel was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This case revolves around Aaron Hernandez. In 2013, in Boston, Aaron Hernandez was accused of taking the life of Odin Lloyd. When the police discovered the body, they concluded that Aaron was responsible for the horrific act and decided to file charges against him. Nothing stood in the way of uncovering the truth. Throughout the case, the lawyer sought to reveal Aaron's true character.
Monday, July 16th, the year 2012. It was a warm summer night in downtown Boston, the theater district. It was a Sunday night leading into a Monday morning. The hustle and bustle of that area, the theater district, with clubs and bars and theaters, was much less on this night. There wasn't as much traffic. There weren't as many people around because, again, it was a Monday morning. And all in all, you'll learn that it was relatively quiet that night, the early morning hours of July 16, 2012. At about 2:30, July 16th, 2012, that relative quiet would be shattered suddenly by the crackle of gunfire. And what you will soon learn from the evidence in this case is the terrible and appalling story that marked and ultimately that this case will tell. The story of this case, ladies and gentlemen, in many ways begins with a story of two very different worlds. Different people from different worlds, different life experiences. Different worlds that came together in the early morning hours of July 16, 2012. One world was that of working class immigrants, relatively recently in this country, not as experienced in the Boston night scene. The other world was that of a professional athlete, a celebrity in the city of Boston. And by pure coincidence, ladies and gentlemen, those two worlds collided, interacted, in those early morning hours of July 16, 2012. Complete strangers to one another. A complete chance encounter and an interaction between those two worlds that to almost anybody would be simply trivial, innocent, forgettable, or at worst, annoying. You will soon know was anything but trivial and innocent to one man. And to that one man, it was something that was not going to be forgotten. Ladies and gentlemen, what started as an interaction, which was a simple bump, a spilled drink, and an exchange of looks thereafter, ended hours later in what the evidence will show was a cold-blooded, senseless, and act of violence. 2 hours after that initial harmless interaction, two men's lives were snuffed out in a hail of fire. In a hail of fire by one man who set upon those two victims as they sat in their car at a stoplight, waiting to go home after the club. One man who took the opportunity to redress the insult that he felt had happened sooner. One man who the evidence will show was fueled by an irrational yet very real sense of disrespect, of being tried, of being tested. One man who took that misperception to the ultimate level of violence. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the evidence in this case will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person I'm referring to, the one man, sits before you today, the defendant, Aaron Hernandez. I said, ladies and gentlemen, there's two worlds involved in this case. One world was that of the two men I just spoke of, who now will be named, Daniel D'Abreu and Safira Furtado. Those are the two men who lost their lives on that city street in the hail of 29-year-old Daniel D'Abreu, 28-year-old Safira Furtado. You will learn from the evidence from this witness stand, hard-working immigrants from the country of Cape Verde. Daniel D'Abreu had been here since 2008. In Cape Verde, you'll learn that he was a police officer. He had military experience. He came here to be with family in 2008, hoping to make his life here in America. 28-year-old Safira Furtado had only been in the country since December of 2011, just a few months. You'll learn in Cape Verde he was a tour guide, and that he came here again to be with family, to hopefully stay with family and to live the American dream. These men on the Sunday, July 15th, 2012, it was a typical night for this group of immigrants from Cape Verde. They got together at a cookout in Dorchester. Old friends got together. Phone calls were made. You'll see, ladies and gentlemen, it was a relatively unique night for this group of Cape Verdean friends. Most of them worked multiple jobs. Safira Furtado worked the overnight shift cleaning businesses. Daniel D'Abreu worked 3 different jobs cleaning. And again, they all worked the overnight shift. But it was Sunday night, and they didn't have to work. You'll learn the only impediment was that Safira Furtado had a soccer game the next day, and he wasn't going to drink. You'll learn that they hung out together at a cookout, and at some point they decided to go out to clubs. You'll learn that for many in this group of 5 Cape Verdean friends, many had not even been to this area of the theater district, had never been to a club called Club Cure. But they got together to spend a night out with friends. But they didn't have a way to get there. You'll learn from the evidence that Daniel D'Abreu borrowed the 2003 BMW from his sister, and the 5 young friends jumped into the car and went to Club Cure. You'll learn that they parked in the parking garage on Tremont Street. Parking garage you'll see many photos of and hear lots of testimony about. You'll be able to watch video as this group of young men from Cape Verde all walk in to Club Cure. You'll learn that they waited in line at Club Cure. They paid a $25 cover to enter. And the 5 friends entered that club, completely unaware, completely oblivious to the celebrity that was walking in right behind them. Completely unaware that 2 of them would have just hours left to live. That's the one world that came to Club Cure in the early morning hours of July 16, 2012. The other world That of the defendant, Aaron Hernandez, star athlete, professional football player for the New England Patriots, a recognizable celebrity not only on the streets or based on TV, but most importantly recognizable in the nightclubs of Boston where he frequented. Aaron Hernandez, doing exceptionally well, his career blossoming. You'll learn from the evidence he was soon to sign a multi-million-dollar contract for the New England Patriots. That Sunday night leading into Monday morning, July 16, 2012, the defendant Aaron Hernandez just got back from 10 days in Costa Rica with a friend, and when he arrived, he landed in his home state of Connecticut. You'll learn from the evidence that Aaron Hernandez, born and raised in Bristol, Connecticut. Friends are there, family's there. And when he arrived at Bradley International Airport sometime on Sunday the 15th, he called somebody who's very important to this case. He called what the evidence will show is perhaps his very best friend in that time period, a man named Alexander Bradley. Alexander Bradley, ladies and gentlemen, you will hear an awful lot about in this case. One important point to keep in mind right now is that Alexander Bradley was one of his very best friends. You will learn that they were so close at that time that there was even talk about making Alexander Bradley the godchild of the child that Mr. Hernandez, the defendant, was expecting. They were very close. They spent a lot of time together. There's another very important fact that you should know about Alexander Bradley, what his profession was. He was a marijuana dealer. And as you'll learn from the evidence, he was quite successful at it. He did well, he made a lot of money. And you'll also learn from this evidence, ladies and gentlemen, who one of his customers was, the defendant, Aaron Hernandez. And you'll learn a lot about their relationship leading up to that fateful night of Monday, July 16, 2012. You'll learn that Alexander Bradley and Aaron Hernandez had a lot in common, that they liked to do the same things. And those things, more often than not, consisted of playing video games, smoking marijuana, and going to nightclubs. And that is what they did frequently. And that's going to be a very important fact as you weigh and listen to the testimony of Alexander Bradley. But this particular night, ladies and gentlemen, was a Sunday night. It was not unusual for Alexander Bradley and the defendant to go out on a Sunday night. It was actually quite common, particularly during the football season when Mr. Hernandez would have at home games. They would often go out on Sunday nights. But this particular Sunday night, July 15, 2012, the defendant called Alexander Bradley in Hartford and asked him if he wanted to step out, which was a word for going out together to clubs. And Mr. Bradley agreed. You'll learn from the evidence that at some point around 10 o'clock on the 15th, the Sunday night, the defendant, Aaron Hernandez, picked up Alexander Bradley in a certain car, a car that's very important to this case. Because unlike Daniel D'Abreu, the defendant, Aaron Hernandez, did not have to borrow a car to get to the club. The defendant, Aaron Hernandez, had a black Range Rover, but most importantly this night, he had a 2006 silver Toyota 4Runner SUV with Rhode Island plates. It was a car the defendant had received as part of a promotion with a Rhode Island car dealership. And what you'll learn that means is that the owner of the dealership, in exchange for having football signed, getting tickets to games, gave Mr. Hernandez the use of a free car for whatever he wanted, he and his fiancee to use or whoever else. And that was the car that they were using that night.
What say you, Madam Foreperson? On indictment 2014-10417, offense 001, charging murder in the first degree, victim Daniel D'Abreu. You find the defendant not guilty, guilty of murder in the first degree, or guilty of murder in the second degree?
Not guilty.
What say you, Madam Foreperson? On indictment 2014-10417, offense 002, charging murder in the first degree, victim Zafiro Furtado. You find the defendant not guilty, guilty of murder in the first degree, or guilty of murder in the second degree?
Not guilty.
What say you, Madam Foreperson, on indictment 2014-10417, offense 003, charging armed assault with intent, victim Aquilino Freire. You find the defendant not guilty, or guilty of this offense as charged?
Not guilty.
What say you, Madam Foreperson, on indictment 2014-10417, offense 004, charging armed assault with intent to victim Gerson Lopes. Do you find the defendant not guilty, or guilty of the offense as charged?
Not guilty.
What say you, Madam Foreperson, on indictment 2014-10417, offense 005, charging armed assault with intent to murder, victim Rashidi Sanchez? Do you find the defendant not guilty or guilty of the offense as charged?
Not guilty.
What say you, Madam Foreperson, on indictment 2014-10417, offense 006, charging assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon, to wit, victim Aquilino Freire? Do you find the defendant not guilty or guilty of this offense as charged?
Not guilty.
What say you, Madam Foreperson, on indictment 2014-10417, offense 007, charging possession of a firearm, not home, work, no license, to wit, a .38 caliber, the date of July 16th, 2012. Do you find the defendant not guilty or guilty of the offense as charged?
Guilty of the offense as charged.
And what say you, Madam Foreperson, on indictment 2015-10384, offense 001, charging witness intimidation? Do you find the defendant not guilty or guilty of the offense as charged?
Not guilty.
Members of the jury, hearken to your verdicts as the court has recorded it. You, upon your oath, do say that in indictment 2014-10417, offense 001, charging the defendant with murder in first degree, victim Daniel D. Abreu, you find him not guilty. With respect to indictment 2014-10417, offense 002, charging murder in the first degree, victim Safiro Furtado, you say the defendant is not guilty. On indictment 2014-10417, offense 003, charging armed assault with intent to murder, victim Aquilino Freire, you find the defendant not guilty. With respect to indictment 2014-10417, offense 004, charging armed assault with intent to murder, victim Gerson Lopes, you find the defendant not guilty. With respect to indictment 2014-10417, offense 005, charging armed assault with intent to murder, victim Rashidi Sanchez, you find the defendant not guilty. With respect to indictment 2014-10417, offense 006, charging assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon, to wit, firearm, victim Aquilino Freire, you find the defendant not guilty. With respect to indictment 2014-10417, offense 007, charging possession of a firearm, not home, work, no license, to wit, a .38 caliber revolver, the date of July 16th, 2012. You say the defendant is guilty of this offense as charged. And with respect to indictment 2015-10384, offense 001, charging witness intimidation, you find the defendant not guilty. So say you, Madam Foreperson?
Yes.
So say you, all members of the jury?
Yes.
Your Honor, may the verdict slips be filed.
Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.